Welcome back. So I heated up our crucible about 4 or 5 times, and finally the mass stopped changing. So our final mass of our crucible with our heated substance is 13.639 grams. Now if you're continuing, I am now on step 9. So it tells you to take the contents of the crucible and dump them into a 400 milliliter beaker. See if it will let me do this without it sticking. That's all of it. It tells us to add about 200 milliliters of distilled water. So I've already measured out our first 100 milliliters. It's still a little warm. So we need another 100 milliliters. We are going to stir until it is completely dissolved. There's just a little bit left in the bottom. Okay. So on step 11, it tells us to add about 125 milliliters of the 0.2 calcium chloride solution. So I have measured out my first 100. Immediately notice that there is a chemical change going on. I'm going to get the other 25 milliliters. Just so this acts in excess and all of our unknown carbonate reacts. I'm just going to stir it together to complete and make sure everything completely reacts. And it tells us that a precipitate is going to form, and we're going to let it settle for about 5 minutes. While we're doing that, we are going to take a piece of filter paper. Filter paper is basically like a high-dollar coffee filter. So just a little disc. It tells us to record the mass of it. So we're going to go over to our analytical balance while that's settling. Always make sure that your balance is at 0. It tends to change when air blows on it and things like that. So our filter paper has a mass of 0.298 grams. And if you keep going on to the next page, it tells you how to prep and fold your filter paper into a cone. So we're going to fold it in half once. Fold that in half again. So we have a little cone shape. Tells us to tear off this corner. And then we are going to completely open it up to where we have an enclosed cone shape. If you can see that. Tells us to stick this part down in the bottom. This helps hold open the cone while maintaining the mass. If we got rid of that little corner, it would actually lower our mass altogether. Tells us we're going to put that in a filter funnel. So the filter sits inside, has a long stem that can drip down. And it tells us to wet this filter with a little bit of distilled water. This just allows it to hold itself open and stick. It doesn't matter how much water we use, as long as we just get it to stick enough. And we're going to push it down to where it's sitting completely in our filter, and we don't really have any gaps or anything, if you notice. That we're going to put in a ring stand. And that's what we're going to use to filter our precipitate out that we just produced. So whenever we begin filtering, we need a new 400 milliliter beaker to drip into, and I'm going to end up lowering this so it's closer. I can't lower it too much because that other one's still warm from where we were heating it. And we're going to start filtering. It tells us to filter and pour it into the funnel using a stir bar. This is like if you're pouring liquid at home, using a spoon or a substance like that, it just keeps it from splattering and going elsewhere. So we're going to start filtering this and let the liquid run down our stir bar. We want to make sure that our liquid does not go over the top of the filter paper. So what it's doing is it's going to filter out all of the liquid, and our precipitate will be left behind in the filter paper. This is actually going to take about an hour total, so I'm going to come back to you guys once it is completely filtered.